Okay, budget justification, budget and budget justification. This subcriterion will demonstrate that you have designated adequate resources to carry out the proposed project while ensuring the costs are reasonable.
All right, the line item budget is worth a maximum of 4 points, and you can find the details about the line item budget starting on page 108 in the training manual. A line item budget is required for each year of your project. The line item budget provides detailed amounts of federal and non-federal resources needed to carry out the project work plan for each project year. For example, a 3-year project would have 3 individual line item budgets. The budgets should also include required travel to the post-award training in year 1 and the annual grantee meeting for every year of the project. On the screen, you will see a template for a line item budget. You can find this template under the Handouts tab in the GoToWebinar dashboard. This template is a fill-in sheet, so you should be able to plug in your numbers and category descriptions right into the template. A neat thing about this template is that it should automatically calculate your numbers. The template includes columns for both your federal and non-federal shares, and the last column there will total the 2 columns, your federal and non-federal. In the end, you want your line item budget to look as clean as possible. This makes it really easy for the reviewers to read and understand. You want to get rid of any blank rows and make sure items are placed in the right category. The training manual provides a great example of a line item budget, and that example starts on page 120.
Okay, so Kwani mentioned that we have budget class categories, and we're going to take a moment to go through them so that you're familiar with them. Okay, we're going to start with personnel. Personnel is only for staff of the project, so people that are getting paid salaries for the project. It doesn't include consultants, and it doesn't include anybody. Just want to make sure that they're salaried staff. You want to identify their commitment to the project, so whether they're a full-time equivalent or an FTE, or maybe a part-time or a half-time or a quarter FTE, you want to identify that in this section. The next section is the fringe benefits. The fringe benefits, for this section, it's good to talk to your HR person or your budget people to let you know what the current fringe benefits package that you have included for your employees, and you want to make sure that those are filled out correctly and then you're adding them correctly into your budget. Travel. Travel is for salaried staff only. So you're not going to include consultant travel in this. You're not going to include local travel, because actually travel is going to be defined as salaried staff's travel overnight and out of state is usually like your rule of thumb. So it has to be like an extended amount of time. It has to be kind of far to be considered travel. If you're going to request local mileage, just to zoom around to different sites, and that would be included in other. So it's only travel for salaried staff only. Remember, all your consultant travel, if that's applicable, that would go under other as well. So for travel, you want to make sure that you include the required travels required by ANA, and that is the post-award training. And the post-award training is for year 1 of your project only. So you're not going to, if you have a 3-year project, you're only going to request it in year 1. You're not going to request it in years 2 and 3. The other required travel is attendance to the grantee meeting, and that is every year of the project. So you will have a required training for every single year of your project for the grantee training. The post-award training is attended by the project director and whoever does your finances, whether it's your finance department or your accountant, so they're going to be traveling to the post award. You want to make sure that the two people that's doing the reporting, so there's the program reporting and then there's the financial reporting. So they're going to the post award. And then for the grantee meeting, it's going to be two program people. So usually it's your program director and another staff person. And this is ANA's chance to meet grantees. It gives grantees a chance to network with other ANA grantees. So that's a nice benefit to being an ANA grantee, is to travel to this meeting. So you want to include those amounts to travel. And you can also include attending, maybe you want to attend a trade show or something that's really an integral part of your project. So you can include that if your staff people are training to travel with that to attend a conference. That can be also included in travel. The next one is equipment. Equipment is a non-expendable, tangible personal property having a useful life of more than 1 year and a per unit cost of more than $5,000. So basically this one is your vehicles, maybe like if you have an agriculture project, maybe you want to purchase a tractor, anything that's got a per unit single price of more than $5,000 and is going to be useful for more than a year is equipment. Some people think that you can't purchase vehicles under an ANA project, and that's not true. You just have to justify why it's needed. So you can outright purchase the vehicle. If maybe you want to purchase a van to go around and pick up youth to attend after school programming, or maybe you want a van with handicap access for your elders so you can pick them up and take them maybe to the elder center or whatever. So as long as you have it justify and it's an integral part of your project, you can request to purchase large pieces of equipment like that. The key thing about equipment that you need to remember is you do need a quote, and it could be either from the vendor or it could be like something you researched online, copied it and threw it in your appendix. But you do need a quote of some kind to go with everything that you're requesting under equipment. For supplies, supplies are usually just for the cost of consumable office supplies, your everyday Post-it notes and papers and pens and ink cartridges, those types of things, and also like meeting supplies. So if you have poster boards or Post-it notes, I'm thinking about my meeting supplies. Those are the things I go through, lots of pens, all those types of things. Those would go under supplies. Contractual is it's a lot of people put consultants under contractual, and it's not necessarily, for the most part, it's not applicable. Usually you put the consultants under other. Contractual usually applies some kind of process. It's usually for large subcontracts, and a lot of times those aren't applicable for A&A grants. So in general, I wouldn't put on anything under contractual. I would just go to the default, which is other, which is our next category. As you can imagine, everything else fits under other. It's kind of a one-size-fits-all type of category. You're going to have your consultants, you're going to have your consultants travel, you're going to have your local travel, you're going to have computers, you're going to have your utilities, your rent, everything else goes under other. Stipends, printing, all of that would go under other. If you're not sure where it would go, just put it under other. It's there's no points deducted if you put it in the wrong category, but I just like to have people aware of what the real meanings are for A&A, and sometimes they'll differ from other federal agencies as well. So I like to review it for our trainees.
So now we're going to get into budget justification, and this is the very last section of your application. So you've gotten through everything, and this is the last thing on the checklist. So
Yay!
Yay! So the budget justification is worth a maximum of 8 points, and it starts on page 123 of the training manual. The budget justification is the companion to the line item budget, and it details how the costs in the line item budget were determined. It includes calculations that you use to obtain the dollar amounts in the line item budget, and this goes for both federal and non-federal resources. It's basically your narrative, the story of the line item budget. Included in the budget justification, there should also be documentation for large ticket items like Dawn was explaining, like equipment and vehicle purchases. Or if you need unique items like specialized technical equipment, documentation that ANA accepts for these large ticket items, and could be, as Dawn mentioned, service quotes, fair market value, internet searches, estimates that you found on the internet, historical data. All these will be accepted as documentation. Commitments for non-federal share contributions should also be supported through documentation. So if you have any of that, make sure you provide documentation for any non-federal share contributions. All items described in the narrative and OWP that have an associated cost should be included in the line item budget and described in the budget justification. Similarly, if there is a cost in the line item budget and budget justification, make sure that it has an activity related to that cost in the OWP and that it is explained in the project narrative.
Okay, so on the screen now is the part of the budget template that's included that you can download, and it's the companion that Connie said to the line item budget. And the cool thing about the template is that if you've completed your line item budget, the category and item description will pre-populate right into the corresponding budget justification. So that saves you the trouble, and it also helps you so you don't skip things or inadvertently not include items in there. So that's really key to consistency in your budget. It also fills in the totals for each budget class category. So not only will you have the personnel listed, but you also have the amount total for that category under the federal share or the non-federal share. So it's all around just a cool little template, and it also does that for every single category. What you'll need to do for the calculation is let us know how you came to that calculation. So often you see the calculation like in parentheses, such as, like our administrative assistant is half-time. So you can have admin assistant 0.5 FTE under the category. We're going to request 25, no, that's kind of a lot for half-time for an assistant. We'll say $20,000 under the federal share. That's what we're requesting. And then it would be like 0.5 FTE times the yearly salary for a $40,000 job as the calculation that will match what you requested on the line item budget. So that's the type of degree that we need for personnel anyways for that part. And then on top of that calculation is a brief justification of why the position is needed, or that justifies why the position should be included in your request. So we need a part-time admin assistant or a half-time admin assistant to assist the project director to carry out administrative tasks, make sure time cards are complete, make sure our communication plan is implemented, whatever applies for that position. And you're going to be doing that for all your positions as well. So the fringe benefit, there's usually not much explanation needed for fringe benefit. It's pretty standard. So then you're going to go down to travel. Travel, you may note in the FOA, they give you a suggested average amount. And some people just take that amount and they insert it here. I think it's like $4,000 to attend the grantee meeting for 2 people, and maybe $3,000 or $3,500 for 2 people to attend the post award. And they just put that amount on, and they're gone. It's like, no, that's not really correct. What you still need to do, even though A&E gives you that ideal of what an average cost is, you need to use your organization's travel policies and break down all those costs and give us a real number. So for attending a post award, you're going to have probably airfare. So you're going to include an estimate for 2 people to attend. If you're from Northern New York and you're going to go to the Language Post Award, which is usually held in around the Phoenix area. So I'm going to do some research about air tickets to go from where I live to Phoenix, multiply that times 2 for airfare. You're going to have lodging. Since it's an A&E training, it's going to go by the GSA rates for hotels. So you can go to gsa.gov, find out that rate for that city, and include that amount for your lodging. And again, that's going to be maybe like $130 per night plus tax for 4 nights for 2 people. Again, this is the amount of detail that's needed. You're going to do per diem rates if you have them. You're going to be $57 a day for 4 days for 2 people. You're going to include any ground transportation like Ubers or parking, airport parking, whatever complies with your travel policies for your organization. So that's the amount of detail that is needed for this section for all of the line item budgets that you're requesting for. So the same thing for the grantee meeting. Like I said, the post award is usually, the language post award is usually held in Phoenix. So find estimates to go to Phoenix if you're submitting a language award. The post award for the Eastern region for SEDS and ERE, I believe, is also usually in the Phoenix area because we usually do that together with the Western region. It's the same place. For the A&E grantee meeting, that has been in DC for the past couple of years. So it's a good guess to get the cost to attend the meeting in the DC area for the grantee. Again, if you have any other travel that you're applying for, you're going to need to look up those costs as well and include that. For equipment, we already talked about equipment. You need to get the quote, so then you just insert the quote price that you had and then provide the justification about why the equipment is needed. Supplies, you're going to break down either your historical costs or what you anticipate spending and insert those. Contractual, again, probably don't need contractual. And other, you're going to include the explanation and the calculation for all your expenses that you're including in other. Which brings us down to the indirect cost rate. So if your organization has a negotiated indirect cost rate, you're going to insert that amount and it will calculate as well and then add it right into the template. And you're going to include your most recent indirect cost rate in the appendices. And ANA is well aware that often your indirect cost rate that's applicable now probably may not be applicable at the time of the award. So they will just wait until you update or renew your indirect cost rate and submit that, and then that will be worked into your budget once you're awarded. So I believe those are all the specifics about determining costs and providing justifications. Some key things about salary or the budget justification is making those things making all your expenses align with your project narrative and your OWP. Okay, so remember we talked about that rule of 3 about an item aligning with the budget, the OWP, and the narrative. So this is the story with people and with your personnel expenses. If you have a full-time project director, you need to make sure that the activities that they're responsible for in your OWP justify the amount of time that you requested in your personnel. So a project director, if you're requesting a full-time position for them, they should have positions or milestone activities assigned to them that would justify a full-time position. Same thing for part-time. If you're having a half-time admin assistant, I should see the duties associated to them identified in the OWP that correspond with the amount that you've requested for them. And you're going to be doing that as kind of like a double check into for all your personnel that you're requesting. The same goes for consultants. Consultants, while they're under the other category, they're also included in your budget. They're either your federal request or part of your non-federal share, so they should have activities as well in the OWP that justify their budget request. And another thing, so we talked about quotes, non-federal share. Kwani mentioned it before about the documentation for the source of your non-federal share. You're going to need the documentation from the source of your non-federal share included in your application. And I believe it's for at least the first year of your project. So if you're a tribe that is used in your tribal general fund to support the non-federal share, I would expect to see that in the tribal resolution that is included in your as part of the authorizing government agency or authorizing governing documentation. Okay, so in your non-federal share, if your tribe is providing that out of your tribal general fund, I would expect to see that commitment align with your tribal resolution that's required as part of your governing board or your agency that's included, and we'll get into that later. But if your non-federal share is coming from maybe a partner that's providing like training in the curriculum aspect for free or a part of the price, you should be including a letter documenting that commitment as well. So you can include that in the attachments, and you want to make sure that the amount that you have assigned to them in these budgets and line item budgets corresponds to what they have in their letter. So that can be a challenge sometimes, but it's just what we have to do nowadays, right? So you're going to need the non-federal share, and includes documentation for at least year one. And while we're talking about non-federal share, the non-federal share is 20%. The definition in the FOA is 20% of the total project costs. So total project costs are the federal share and the non-federal share added together, and that is your total project cost. And then you take that, multiply it by 0.2 or divide by 5, however you'd like to do your math, and then that'll give you the amount of federal share you're supposed to provide. The thing is with that, kind of makes it hard to work with, is you've already included the non-federal share, and then once you start playing around with the numbers, it just it gets very difficult. So what you can do, and why don't I just switch to the slide here? Calculating the non-federal share has always been quite a challenge for people, but basically you're going to multiply the total project costs and say the amount is $375,000. You're going to multiply that by 0.2 and you're going to get $75,000, and that is what is required for your non-federal share. And you can see that the calculation on the bottom of the screen of the chart. The thing about non-federal share is you need to have committed the 20% for every year of your project. It's not something that can be averaged out across the life of your project. You can't have 10% one year and 30% another and 20% in last year. That's not right. You need 20% for each year. You need to have that commitment documented for at least year one. And what's also good to know is that you can't, it doesn't do you any good. There's no benefit to you for providing more than the 20%. Some people think it makes them look better, but it doesn't. You don't get extra points, so there's really no benefit to it. So while you're working out your numbers, really get to the 20% as close as possible without going under, because if you're short on your non-federal share, it's not good for you either. That they can deduct points for. So you're going to be at 20%. You're going to make sure that it's documented all the way across. That you have that correct amount all the way for every year of your project. And you want to make sure that the source of your non-federal share is from a non-federal agency, or not a federal agency. And there's a caveat to that, of course. There are some federal agencies that do allow you to use it as a match for an A&A project. but you as applicant have to go to that source and make sure that that's allowable, and they would have to go to their authorizing legislation to make sure that's possible. So like I hear a lot about EPA allowing this, so that is something that you'd probably be interested in. But anything that comes out of 638 funds for tribes, that's non-federal. If you have like a nonprofit partner, they're providing a service, or maybe they're going to provide some training for you, that can be used towards non-federal share as well, because their source is not a federal agency. Basically, anything that is integral to your project and helps you implement your project can be used as non-federal share. Sometimes it's things that you don't normally think of. It could be volunteer time. It could be providing some kind of resource. It could be providing dirt for an agricultural project. You never know. As long as it is needed for your project, it could be donating office space or meeting space. Anything that you need for your project, you can certainly apply a dollar amount to and then use that towards a non-federal share as well. And the really cool thing about the template is, let me show you, I'll flip back here. There's the cost, they add the calculations on the bottom. So on the bottom is the calculations for the 20% of the total project costs and the 25% of the federal request. Those numbers, they work out to be the same. It's one of those math anomalies. And as your numbers change in your line item budget, these will change. And once you get to that magic 20% that's required, when this number right here meets this number right here in this cell. Can you see my arrow?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, okay. I hope I wasn't pointing to something you couldn't even see. So when this number here matches this number here, you're golden. You have met your 20% non-federal share requirement. And just to give you some more tips, I believe I've already hit on these, but I'm going to remind you again. Follow the federal object class categories. Some applicants kind of throw in their own, whatever they use for their own accounting. Really, you're requesting money from A&A, use whatever they tell you to. You follow their budget class categories for your submission. You need to identify the 20% of the non-federal share for every project year. Okay, so you want to remember to work with your finance person to determine pay scales, fringe, and indirect rates. So you want to make sure those are as accurate as possible. You don't want to make up your own pay scale, and then once you go to you get an award and you try to hire the person, you don't want the finance person saying, "Where did you get this amount for? That's not right." You want to make sure that it's done from the get-go so that your implementation will go as smoothly as possible. The FOA has travel estimates in it, but you still need to break down the costs. Remember, I went into great detail about that. And also, when you completed your budget and everything's in there, go through and clean it up. Take out, delete those lines that you didn't use. The template has that instructive text in it. Delete all those. So you want a nice, clean budget. I don't think I've mentioned this much during this presentation, but a happy reviewer is a better scoring reviewer. As a, as a former reviewer, I know that to be true. The more clear you make things, and the more easy to read, the happier they are, and the better scores you'll get. You could have the most wonderful project, but if the review criterion are hard to find, or it's not clear, and you're forcing the reviewer to say, is this really met? And you're not sure. Once you put those question marks in their head, that gives them full reign to start deducting points. So that's one thing you want to avoid. And having a nice clean budget is one of the things that'll get you there.
Thank you for watching this video. We hope this video has been helpful in understanding the budget and budget justification criterion. If you have any questions about this video or the ANA application process, our contact information is on the screen. Good luck with your application, and we look forward to reading them.